Okay, first off, I want to thank everybody for coming. This is just a phenomenal turnout, and the number of people I think who came and went at the mortuary was probably twice this, so thank you all. I was asked to deliver the eulogy for my father-in-law, Len, and I'm kind of a relative newcomer to the family. I've only been with him about 20 years, and I think for a lot of the friends out there, that's a very short time as well. To everyone, Leonard represented something very special and personal. He was a loving husband to his beautiful bride. He was a phenomenal father to his children and to his brothers and sisters. He was a loving and protective brother. So he was a friend to a great number of people, and I could go on and on all day mentioning names of individuals, but I just wanted to kind of recognize that all of you are probably somebody very special to Len as well. When I set out to write this, I wanted to kind of write something that was about who Len is. And given the allotted time, not that there's no allotted time, I get that, but...
well, yeah, there is.
I could go on and on all day, but I'm not going to do that. As I asked people to tell me a little about Len, they gave me their stories, and tried to write them down as best I could. And so, same themes kept coming up over and over, and I want to touch on those for just a few moments. First and foremost, Len was a family man. That started with his bride Susan, and I can recall being very new to the family and having Len say, "Susie wants, Susie gets." If you've been around Len, you've heard that. Seems simple enough, make your bride happy, and your life will go very well. And over the last 20 years, I've heard that repeatedly. But I was also a little shocked to find out some of the things that Susie liked, or at least the things that Len told me Susie liked. Trips to the Poconos. Apparently Susie would like to go down every back road that Susie could find, in spite of her objections. While he said it tongue-in-cheek, making Susan happy was Len's life work. Okay, it made him very happy. He had 3 daughters, unless you count Lisa. He had 4. Len counted Lisa. And I asked each of them to kind of tell me a little something about, what their father meant to them. And it was a little hard because he meant so much. So as they were just telling me what he meant to them, I just figured I'd write down some of their quotes. We had to learn to change the oil, fix the flat, and check the belts on our cars. He always brought out the best in us, although I don't know how. Dad could do anything. He could fix anything. He had submarine glue in his garage. Who has submarine glue? He had a butcher saw. Who has a butcher saw and submarine glue? He took the whole family to Disney World, and that was huge. He was so excited about being able to see how they kept Disney World running when they went behind the scenes. We had Dad wrapped around our fingers, and we knew it, but Dad also knew it, and he loved it. He was a big teddy bear. He would be all tough on the outside, but he was all heart on the inside. Some Saturdays after working the night shift, Dad would come home, and we would wake up and ask Dad if he brought home Ann's donuts. He would say no, but he always had them. He had them hidden somewhere, and they were warm. They had just come out of the oven. He used to get up in the middle of the night, raid the cookie jar, and I would wake up and we would both share the cookies. We never saw Dad cry, but he had tears in his eye when he danced with us at the wedding, with the exception of Meg, who said that Dad didn't cry when he danced. And she said, "I'm going to make you cry," and he never did. We probably did, we just didn't do it when he danced. Dad was like a big kid later in life. He wasn't always that way because he took being a provider for his family very serious. And he may not have always understood why we did things, but he was always patient with us. He was unconditional love. About Len, anyone who spent any time with Len knew he had a man cave. Okay, and it was his garage, and whether you were someone who worked with his hands or just somebody who stopped by his home, you had to be impressed with that garage. He had power tools, cars, he had things that, he had some obscure tools. He could fix just about anything. If there ever came a need for a fender or a U-joint for a 56 Pontiac or a gearbox for a transmission for a 72 Suburban, there was a more than remote possibility that it could be found in Len's garage. He always seemed to see the value in the old and discarded and gave it a home in his man cave. He would spend hours in his garage fixing and tinkering or creating and just organizing. I was really impressed when I found out that he had a second floor car garage with just as much stuff in it. As adults and parents, we want to teach our children and impart on life's wisdom. And Len had a lot to pass on. I can recall hearing stories about how Len and Nancy used to go round and round, each having their own opinion on some things. And by God, they both felt they were deserving of the last word. But I never saw that side of Len. I got to see the grandfather that played with 5-year-olds and made them laugh. I watched him teach his grandchildren to pick vegetables in the garden. He taught my daughters to squat behind a tree marking. He literally hung a sign on a tree that read "Women," and my daughters were encouraged to use it. He would take Christopher and Jonathan and Kate and Elizabeth for walks in the woods or rides on the tractor. He went out of his way for his grandchildren. They grew up knowing that Granddad knew Santa, and when Santa came to the house, he was driving a Cadillac. To the children, Granddad was a playmate, and regardless of whether Len was working in the yard or garage, with his grandchildren, he had finally had the attentive and eager audience who just wanted to be out in those places with him. He could be counted on to tell them a story, but more often than not, he could be counted on to give them ideas that kind of ran counter to what their parents told them. One of Len's favorite things was to tell my daughter Kate that her dad was a fibber. She wouldn't have any part of that. She would argue with her granddad. Kate got so used to Granddad's stories that if he said anything, Kate would look over at Grandmom just to see if it was true. And Grandmom shaking her head. When Kate was in first grade, she wrote a paper for her class, and the paper was about her dad. She stated that her father had never told a lie until he met her granddad. I got to tell you, there's nothing more telling about Len than that one line. Not because Len was a liar, but because even when writing about her dad, her granddad was still a central figure in her life. And I think being a granddad was great for Len. It took away some of the responsibility of passing on all that knowledge, and it led him to be more of the kid that he was just beneath the surface. And it never changed who he was, it just let more of him come through. Len had a large circle of friends. He had a way of communicating with people that they immediately liked and trusted him. Whether you were going to Len's corn boil in the summer or just stopping by for a visit, you were always welcome at Len's home. Len's closest friend throughout his life was Eric Stamm. They formed a very exclusive club with just 2 lifetime members. For 50 years, they talked every week. I asked Eric to give me his thoughts on Len, and Eric knew Len as much as anyone, and he said that Len liked to stir the pot. But that's not the phrase he used, but church being church. And he gave me this story. He said, when Dancing with the Stars first came on, Len did not like the show. And I heard that from Susan as well. But he knew that Connie loved the show. That's Eric's wife. He knew that Connie loved the show and she watched it religiously. And Len started watching the show. And at the most critical moments in the show, Len would call up Connie and Eric just to interrupt. Connie figured out what was going on and she stopped taking the calls. Eventually Len stopped calling. But Len still seemed to know what was going on with the show. I had a personal story that happened just this past week, and it was about Len. We stepped off the store, and there was a proprietor there. He was from India. He spoke English, but he had a very thick accent. I shared with him that Len was gravely ill, and he felt very sad about that. But he told me the story about how Len would always come in and call him Mr. Patel. His name was Sonny Patel. He would come in and call him Mr. Patel. And Sonny was a young man, so it wasn't because he was calling him that because of his age or out of respect. Sonny told me he called him that because he wanted to hear Sonny say, Mr. Schlotzauer. Because Sonny couldn't do it. That was Len. Len worked for 43 years at Kimberly-Clark and Scott Paper, and at times he held down 2 jobs. He would only be home long enough to sleep and have Susan pack him lunch and help him Len. He worked all those years so that Susie can get what Susie wants. The past 6 years was great fun watching Len and Susie. The children were moved out. It was just the 2 of them, and they built a house together in Maryland. The house was nice, and the property gave Len more opportunity to tinker and buy new toys. He added a log splitter and a tractor to his already impressive list of gadgets in his garage. He had a whole new home that needed a lot of stuff done. He had a whole new neighborhood of people to meet. He was back in business doing the things that Len loved to do. When it snowed, Len would be out on that tractor plowing out the neighbors' driveways. But I think the last several years were truly about what Susie wants, what Susie gets. There was more time together without all the children and without the work. It was just the 2 of them. The day trips to wherever they wanted to go, or just going out to dinner with friends. He would visit the daughters wherever they were. And in the end, Len didn't have to go overboard buying Susie whatever Susie wanted, because what Susie wanted was a long, happy, full life with Len. And in the end, he did just that. Len meant a great deal to all of us. He was a man that loved people, and he loved life. He was a devoted husband and loving father. He was a loyal friend. He had a playful spirit and a kind soul. We will all remember something different